5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. All engine running. Liftoff. We have a liftoff.
Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of Truth, Beer, and Podsequences, the podcast where we recap Cincinnati beer podcasts with our version of the truth. We're hoping that there aren't too many consequences from the hosts of the podcast we cover when we add in our own wild speculations about what's really going on behind the mic. I'm Julia.
And I'm Marco. So, as we get started, certainly at the front here, I'd like to give a big shout out to BC's Montgomery, our podcast host, and Kenny, our producer today. Kenny, thank you. Thank you, Kenny. BC's Bottle Lodge, Montgomery, come here, bring the kids, because they have craft sodas. So, BC's Bottle Lodge, Montgomery, come down, get a pint. You might see Julie and I taping Truth, Beer, and Podsequences.
And I have to say that today our episode is not sponsored by Sonder. Sonder Brewing. Hey guys, we have a podcast too.
That's right.
So speaking of podcasts, what are the podcasts that we're going to be recapping today?
Well, you know, as I say, you know, at the front when you ask me this, I've listened to all of them, listened to all of the podcasts. Today, though, we're going to shrink that list down. We're going to talk about the latest episode of Cincy Brewcast. We're going to talk about the latest episode. We're going to talk about last week's episode of Sonder Stories. So Sonder released a podcast on Wednesday, and then they released another podcast. I think it was Monday morning of the week that we're recording in. So they put out two in less than a week. They're cheating. Which is, I think they're trying to get ahead of the curve because they took a little bit of a break, and then they're a little spotty, and then they came back, and now they're just trying to make up, I guess, for some time. I don't know. But we will cover the one that came out in the week that we're taping. So we tape usually, or record. We're not taping. I sound like an old man.
I mean,
I know.
You
I resemble that remark. Essentially, yesterday, which for you in podcast land means only the day before today, they released an episode. We will talk about that episode next week in Truth, Beer, and Podsequences. And so this week is going to be the week, if you're keeping up with this is the week where they actually have a guest on, which is the Gnarly Gnome. And let's see, we're going to talk about Hustle and Brews and Shift Beers. So, Julia, what are you drinking right now?
Oh, I am drinking Bert Got Dumb by Streetside. It's a milkshake IPA. It is 6%. It is bright pink, and it's delicious. So, Marco, how about you? What's in your glass today?
I got this new joint over here. It is from Bell's. It is Two Hearted Ale, American IPA. It is, trying to find the ABV on the can. What does it matter? It really doesn't.
No. All that does it taste good? That's all that really matters.
No, it tastes great.
Are you enjoying drinking it? There you go.
I mean,
there you go.
First time for everything.
All right. Well, let's get started with recapping some podcasts. We have a good variety to go over.
Did we bring the wheel, or did we forget the wheel?
I left the wheel in my other car.
Oh, okay. Oh. I'm going to go to my car. I'm going to get a dartboard and some darts.
Perfect.
We're going to set it up here at BC's Montgomery. Bring your own dartboard when you come to BC's Montgomery. And then tell Kenny, just say, hey, Kenny, where should I set this dartboard up?
All right, so we're back. The dartboard is set up, and Kenny wanted us to put it right by the door.
I don't want to tell you where he told me to put it at first, but we ended up putting it right by the wine bottles. We hung it up right by the wine bottles.
Which is also right by the bathrooms, so there's going to be a lot of foot traffic. Things could get messy.
Just
be careful.
Be careful. And
Eyes up.
We're talking to the people that are here at BC's Montgomery. Be careful. Okay, Julia, ladies first.
All right, let me go ahead and throw a dart and see where this bad boy lands.
I knew it. Go ahead, Julia.
Hustle and Brews.
I
Matt
knew
Damaris.
I knew it. Matt Damaris, our good friend Matt Damaris.
Absolutely.
Shout out to Matt Damaris for Hustle and Brews podcast. So So for those of you who don't know, you should listen to his show, Hustle and Brews. So what he does is every episode of Hustle and Brews is where he, an entrepreneur who doesn't really like to think of himself as an entrepreneur, he likes to think of himself as a hustler, baby. And then so he talks to local entrepreneurs about their come up, about their story, how they got to where they're at. He asks them one question, then he feeds them in the beginning is, what is your why? And so this episode is Guerrilla Cinema with Jacob Trevino and Otto. Is this
We'll
Bahn?
just say Otto.
Or just Otto?
Autobahn, that's the road in Germany where there is no speed limit. The Autobahn. Are you sure you're reading that right?
How about we just say Jacob and Otto?
That works.
Okay.
That works. So the name Guerrilla Cinema, a lot of people may not know that name.
I don't.
But how would
Well,
you
I
know
didn't.
them? How would you know them? Because they have a lot of bars in the Cincinnati area that you might recognize. So why don't you throw off a couple of those names if they're in the
Yeah,
show
absolutely.
description?
So the Overlook Lodge in Pleasant Ridge. Let's see what else we got. Tiki Bang Bang in Walnut Hills. That was formerly the Video Archive. The Lonely Pines Steakhouse in Pleasant Ridge. Tokyo Kitty, that's downtown. La Offerenda in OTR. They recorded at the Overlook Lodge.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Which is based off of the movie The Shining. All their bars are, for the most part, movie themed, I believe. Some more strongly than others. I think that Tiki Bang Bang isn't as much based off of a specific movie as something like the Overlook Lodge. They all sound like fantastic places to visit, great cocktails.
So these places are the places where all the cool people are at. All of the cool people, if you are cool, you are going to these places. These places are places that Cincinnatians, when they hear that somebody went there, they go, oh,
Which
you
is,
did.
Which is probably why neither of us have ever been there to any of their locations.
True.
Yes,
I
yes.
have not been to any of them. However, these names I'm familiar with. That's where the cool people are. Mm-hmm. And so we're actually just waiting, I think is what it is. We're waiting for some of these cool people to invite us. So,
if you're a cool person and you're going to one of these bars, please invite us.
Right.
We'd like to go.
Yep, absolutely.
But no, it was a great episode. It was the first time that Matt had interviewed multiple entrepreneurs who are all part of the same company in one episode. So he had to, I think he found a really great balance between both of them and their separate whys, their separate reasons for getting into the business, for where the ideas came from, for how they implemented all of their ideas for all of these different bars that they run. Mm-hmm. Though I did feel like there were a couple of missteps during the podcast.
There's a couple things I want to bring up. They also talk about the new venture that they're going into. Mm-hmm. This is a new venture that it's going to be a Rambo themed bar, and so there's going to be, a lot of drinks that are inspired by Sylvester Stallone's character.
I don't know that I like the fact that you have to wear like a headband, bandana.
Yeah,
like
headband.
when you go in, everyone is going to be given
when
one
they
of
check
those.
your ID, instead of handing you a wristband, they hand you one of the headbands.
Yeah. I mean, it's a cool idea. For sure, but I'm thinking. Think about all the cool people that go to these bars. A lot of the women that go there, a lot of the men that go there, their hair is going to be like done perfectly,
feathered,
and you're going feathered, coiffed,
amazingly feathered,
and you're going to expect them to flatten that with a bandana. Again, I absolutely love the concept. It is what Sly would do, and I love the concept. I just wonder how many people will be willing to sacrifice their look for the experience, for the drink.
Me.
You would? Okay.
I would, absolutely. I would.
Well, but your hair also is, that's a different story for a different day.
Thick, lush.
It's a different story for a different day.
Fair enough. But think about how many different locations they can come off just by creating places that are derivative or derived from characters that Sylvester Stallone played.
I mean, they're all going to be like jungle themed.
Tango and Cash. A Tango and Cash bar? Come on.
Rocky, where you have to walk up like a whole big flight of stairs in order to get to the bar to order your drink.
Yeah.
And then you have to walk all the way back down to where the tables are at the
and
bottom.
Then you have to do the, like, jump up with your arms in the air.
They won't serve you if you don't. But it is very, very cool.
They
really are. They
really
absolutely
geniuses
are.
In that regard.
Absolutely.
That idea is fantastic.
It really is. But I did want to call out something that a local brewer at a very prestigious brewery here would have been beyond mortified to hear.
Oh, I
will not name names, but someone on that podcast, maybe the host, maybe one of the guests, they were talking about what they were drinking, because that's another part of Hustle and Brews.
Yes.
They're at either a bar, a brewery. Matt has said that he asked them, where do you like to drink? Where do you like to go to hang out? That's where we're going to go to have a drink and do the podcast. They were at the Overlook Lodge. They were at their bar. And he said that they were drinking Berliner Weisses.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I thought about one word, chase.
Yeah, I mean, that'd probably make his skin crawl.
Yeah. Kind of little, if those of you who don't know the Chase that I'm referring to, Chase Legler, one of the absolutely amazing brewers at Sonder Brewing, he is a purist when it comes to the pronunciation of beer styles, which I understand. That's perfectly acceptable. But every time someone mispronounces Hefeweizen or Berliner Weiss or a Pilsner, you can just see his skin crawl.
Yeah.
And one of these days he's
got
gonna
like
snap.
this tick where his head like ticks to the right, and it just goes over and over again, like until eventually he just has to interject and make sure that don't ever do that again.
Right. But no, the rest of the interview was great. Definitely something you should give a listen to if you've ever been to any of Guerrilla Cinema's bars, any of their locations. Even if you haven't, you should listen to it so you know where to go to, because these are phenomenal sounding locations here in Cincinnati to get a drink, to have an amazing experience, something that isn't part of the everyday typical bar scene.
Speaking of phenomenal, did you hear about 3/4 of the way through the podcast? Did you hear the police?
I did. I didn't want to say anything about it, but I heard it.
Roxanne,
you don't want to put on the red light.
Have to. Okay. Yeah.
But anyway, great music in those venues as well, as as is apparent. But yeah, the police made a very loud presence in.
They made a cameo
in part of the podcast.
Yeah, it was good. It was a good listen. And
until they ended with their post-show cheers. With what sounded to me like empty glasses.
It's because they said they were empty.
They said that they no longer had anything left to drink.
In their own bar.
In their own bar. And that is another thing that...
Call somebody.
So here's something. You're familiar with 50 West Punch-Out, correct?
Yep.
So I think that in the next iteration of 50 West Punch-Out, there needs to be a new class or category of fight called Chase Versus.
Okay.
Where he just fights everyone that mispronounces beer styles and cheerses on empty glasses.
Yeah, I don't see why not.
There'll be no shortage of people lined up to be taken out by the Gentle Giant.
That's right. And speaking of cameos, if the microphones are picking this up, my son is here at BC's Bottle Lodge, Montgomery. My son, Vincent. Say hi, Vincent.
Hi, Vincent.
Oh, he's patting
himself on the back.
He's patting himself on the
knows.
back over there. But he's he's getting a little loud. But he enjoys coming here because he has some craft soda. Every time he comes here, he's got his craft soda, and Kenny, our producer Kenny, just makes sure that
he keeps his glass
full.
He
keeps his glass full.
Well, was there anything else about Hustle and Brew that you wanted to go over? Or do you think we wrap this up in a pretty little empty glass kind of package?
I will say to wrap things up on Hustle and Brews, the entire show has a really positive sense about it. The two business partners are very, very excited to talk about their business, and they go into the fact that even when things might take there might be a speed bump or things or get a little rough. They love the business that they're in, so they don't mind digging in and doing
getting
the work.
getting their hands dirty when they need. The way their creativity bounces off of each other as well is you can just kind of hear that little ping pong ball being hit back and forth between the two as they're bouncing ideas off of each other, as they're talking about coming up with the ideas for their existing locations. And it's infectious. It's something that you want to be a part of.
Speaking of infectious,
of that as well.
Matt Damaris also comments and talks about 2 weeks ago when he had to shovel shit.
Literally.
That's in the podcast.
So if you're eating when you listen to the podcast, you might want to fast forward through a couple seconds of that.
Or not. You're fine.
Or not.
You're
It's fine.
It's okay. So let me get a dart.
Okay.
All right, Julia.
Let's go.
Did I tell you I was a darts champion in Denver?
You did not. I didn't even know you
'cause
went to
I
Denver.
wasn't. All right. We did it.
All right.
All right. So it landed on Sonder Stories. Let's talk about Sonder Stories. Let's get my notes. Let me pull my notes up. The reason you don't hear papers like, rustling is because
We are part of the digital revolution.
That's right.
And we don't kill trees.
Julia, I'll talk to you about the other job that I do.
Oh.
And then,
He's a lumberjack in another life.
I'm a lumberjack. Oh, hold on a second. That's the second song I'm going into. All right, so let's see.
So Sonder
Stories. So, okay. So this is chapter 68, One Draft List Forever with the Gnarly Gnome. Our friend Gnarly Gnome jumps on the podcast to talk about a very tough question. This is it. This is the tough question. Is everybody ready? Very tough. You get 10 draft lines at your place of residence, and those are the only 10 beers you're able to drink for the rest of your life. So what's on your tap list? The show has Justin, Danny, and the Gnarly Gnome. They curate their tap list and have plenty discussion. So every episode ends with list of songs that they're jamming to. Then they add those to the Sonder Stories playlist, which you can catch on Spotify.
So subscribe to not only their podcast, but to their Spotify playlist as well.
Yeah. Do you use Spotify?
I don't.
Yeah, I don't either.
I don't. I tend to listen to stuff either on YouTube or the radio or, I don't know. I don't like my playlist being curated
like
for me.
terrestrial radio?
Yeah, like
Really?
FM. Yeah, the waves.
I forgot that was even still a thing.
Even a thing, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, okay, so I don't Spotify either.
Okay.
My music, I'm on Pandora or YouTube. Okay. Probably why we haven't been invited to any of these cool places. Yeah,
even though we are in the digital age with looking at our phones for the podcast notes, we're still behind the times, obviously, when it comes to some things like
Remind me, I have
music.
to go get some film developed when this is over.
Picking it up at Walgreens, 1 hour developing?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, can do.
Yep.
So these tap lists, I thought they were incredibly well-rounded, more so than what I was expecting, except for Justin's. We knew his was going to be Sonder heavy, but I didn't expect it to be Sonder full.
Okay, so Sonderful. Can we create? Is that a new term?
It is.
That we
It is
can
a new
create?
term.
It's
Let's do it.
Sonderful.
It is Sonderful.
How is everything? Oh, it's so Sonderful. So I'm going to take a slightly different spin on this one. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm going to say that I'm proud of Justin and Danny.
Really? Okay.
For actually incorporating 2 or 3 beers that weren't Sonder beers.
Yeah, that is fair.
So you think of Justin and Danny. They're this dynamic duo, right? They're
literally the
right.
voices of Sonder, for the most part.
Yeah, they're like a country duo. You know, they're Big and Rich or Brooks and Dunn
Or Kenny and Chesney.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So it would be like going to Big and Rich. Hi, y'all. This is Rich with Big and Rich. It'd be like going to them and saying, you can only listen to 10 songs. Which one is it going to be? Well, I'm going to start off with In Your City because it's such a good song. in your city. So to me, I'm going to say I'm proud of them for actually incorporating 2 or 3 beers that were not Sonder beers. So for those of you who didn't listen to the show, you can do that, or I can just let you know what the tap list is. And
maybe not the whole tap list. You
Okay.
got to leave a little bit of mystery to
I
it,
am
even though
gonna-
they can go to Sonder Stories podcast on Instagram to see the tap list. I believe they posted it on their Twitterfication account as well.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, rattle off a couple of the beers on. Let's start with Justin's.
Yeah,
tap
I'm going to go
list.
ahead and rattle off a few of these beers, and not all of them are going to be Sonder beers. So just a few from Justin's list. Voss from Sonder Brewing. Oktoberfest from Sonder Brewing. You Betcha from Sonder Brewing. Let's see, what else? I don't want to give the whole list away. So Bella from Sonder Brewing. Midwest Haze from Sonder Brewing. Let's see, what else? Port Barrel Family Tradition Stout from Sonder Brewing. And I'm going to stop there. I don't need to
I
read
think
the
we've
whole
heard
list.
enough. Yeah, I think we've heard enough. Again, incredibly Sonder heavy, to be expected. They do make some excellent beer.
Look, I mean, when you're Justin, when you're Danny, when you have the positions that you have, when you're, one of the founders of Sonder Brewing, you're going to be proud of what you put out, and you're gonna say, "Damn, I want to drink that all the time," and that's fine. They put
Sure.
out some, amazing beers.
Sure, and they should be proud of what they're doing because
Absolutely.
Sonder is phenomenal. I guess to me, I just wish that there would have been a little more variety. Because again, if you're drinking these beers, you don't want to get tired of your own stuff.
Oh,
You don't
well,
want
if
to
you want-
eventually go, I do not want to drink another Sonder beer, but I work there. I own the place. Sonder is my life.
But do you want some?
And I still have to drink.
Do you want some diversity in the tab list?
Yeah, let's. What
I could
is,
go to Danny's.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, let's go to Danny's.
All
tap
right,
list
so
and
the
see what
Rally
he's
Cap
doing.
from Sonder Brewing.
Oh, my God.
Oktoberfest from Sonder Brewing.
Oh,
That's
my
a double
God.
up. Let's see, what else? Hundo P from Sonder Brewing.
Are you serious?
Schwester.
Who's that from?
Sonder,
Oh.
Sonder Brewing.
So
One more or not one more?
No, I've heard enough.
Okay.
I've heard enough. Again, all phenomenal beers.
Mm-hmm.
But you would think that there'd be a little more diversity in the tap list.
Well,
But
there's
it's
plenty
cool.
of diversity. I mean, listen. I mean, you have a Pilsner, and then you have an Oktoberfest, and you have a double IPA, and you have
So
a
you're
stout.
going more based on the styles and not necessarily the brewery.
I mean, tomato,
But they-
tomato, whatever.
Potato. What really surprised me, however, was Gnome's list.
Did it?
It did.
In what way did
There-
it surprise you? Because I thought it was right on brand.
Well, what surprised me is if you listen to Cincy Brewcast, The Weekly Pint, Prost, Drinking with the Gnome, any of his shows, he states explicitly over and over that he doesn't understand the seltzer craze. He will drink it as part of kind of like research to see what, if local breweries are putting it out, he is, willing to give it a try. But I never expected that if he only had 10 taps to drink from for the rest of his life, that White Claw, Mango White Claw, would be on that list. It's just, I thought that was completely out of character. Surprised me, and I guess I'll say a good way, that he is willing to admit that he is a fizz head.
Mm-hmm. It's like the Barry Manilow of tap lists.
It really, yeah.
Yeah.
It was pretty mellow.
He's like
Some of the other-
hitting on it, like Copacabana. Start off with Copacabana, and I mean, like the seltzer he picked would be sort of mirroring Copacabana. Yeah.
But I mean, some of the other ones he had on there were phenomenal. They would probably be on my list as well, such as Carmen's Carrot Cake from Sonder. I'm noticing a very strong trend here. But Stegosaurus Sour from Urban Artifact, Westside Brewing's Pilsner, and one of the other one was Gustav, the Vienna Lager from Taft's Brewing.
At the Copacabana.
Copacabana.
Okay, yeah, that's the Gnomes tap list.
But it was really interesting in how the three of them approached creating their tap lists. Danny wanted, a couple crispy boys, a couple, 2 or 3 easy drinkers, and then a few hoppier choices, and then a couple darker choices, things that would really curate a very well-rounded, year-round beer list that no matter what the situation, what the time of year, whatever is happening, there is a beer on his list to fit that situation.
Yeah. And he had the magic tap.
He did have the magic tap, which Gnome tried to call bullshit on, but I think that Danny just exposed a loophole that Gnome was upset that he didn't think of.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It was Danny's game.
It was. So he can make the rules, and this magic tap, I gotta say, I'm behind it 100%.
Yeah, magic tap.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's brilliant. It's a brilliant idea.
Agreed.
But the thing is, he could have let everybody else in at the beginning on the magic tap, and he decided to keep it for himself.
But is that Danny's fault, or is that Justin and Gnome's fault for not thinking outside of the box and thinking creatively? Because I believe that he said the only thing that they were kind of told about this, and I'll call it a game, even though it's not, really a game, was you have 10 taps, and that's all you can drink from for the rest of your life. He never said that those were the only, that what was coming out of that tap that moment was the only thing that could ever come out of that tap.
Yeah, it's one of those things where Danny basically said, look, I'm not telling you to think, I'm just asking if you want to.
Yeah, for sure.
That's it.
For sure.
That's what it was. And then they ended with the Gnome's music choice.
Yeah, 311.
Yeah.
Good song.
Yeah, 311.
Good song. It was not country. It was
I know.
surprising.
And you know what? Hats off. I don't even know why you say hats. Why do we do that? Hats off. Shout out to
in the oldie times, they used to remove their hats as a sign of congratulations. So,
okay.
And we never got rid of it, even though no one wears hats anymore. Except
but when you go to the new Rambo themed bar, you put on a headband. So, but anyway,
you have to take off your hat.
Yeah, you have to take your hat off.
Yeah.
All right.
We got it.
We did it. We did it.
So Sonder Stories, was there anything that we missed? I mean, it was. I mean, all of their episodes are great. This was a really fun one because it was a little outside of the box for Sonder because it wasn't explicitly about something Sonder related, except for Danny and Justin's entire tap lists.
Yeah.
Okay.
They made sure, even though they posed a question that allowed you to think outside of the Sonder box, they did a great job from a marketing perspective, making sure that it was all about Sonder. So
is it kind of like Schrodinger's cat or Schrodinger's beer? Is Sonder in the box or out of the box?
Yeah, I mean, when you peel back the layers, I mean, Sonder is the box.
Sonder is the box.
Yeah.
And it's a good box.
Yeah,
it's a good box to be in.
Yeah, it's a good box.
Nice.
Nice box.
So we're down to just 2 podcasts left. So we have Cincy Brewcast and we have Shift Beers.
Yeah, but you got to throw a dart, though.
I do have to throw a dart. We do. We can't just, go picking these things all willy-nilly. So let me go ahead and find a dart. And there are people walking past the dart board.
Wait a minute.
You guys got to move. I'm about to throw a dart in the direction of your head. So if you could just, move along. Well, right. I understand that you're trying to pick out a bottle of wine, but we're trying to do a podcast here, so hustle. All right. I'm throwing it anyway.
Go.
There we go.
All
right, 1,
take people
2,
so long.
3.
It's like standing and looking at the McDonald's menu for 10 minutes. What are you doing? This menu hasn't changed in like 55 years.
Yeah, I mean it's wine.
Order a number 1 and let's move on.
Absolutely, and no, do not ask for your fries with no salt.
Oh my God.
This one is going to be Marco's favorite one to talk about.
Oh.
It is this week's episode of Shift Beers with a very, very special guest.
Yeah. Is
Beth.
a special guest.
Beth ran the board. She did an absolutely amazing job.
She did.
Josh still kind of ran the show as far as speaking, but Beth got to push all the buttons. And I'm excited to see what she can do this coming week when she does the entire show.
While Josh is on vacation wearing a big hat.
Yes. Hey, someone wearing a hat. Hats off to him.
Ah.
We are coming full circle, guys.
Glad you were with us here on episode 2 of Truth, Beer, and Podsequences, where we close up all our loopholes, I guess. I don't know.
Hey, whatever works. But no, in all honesty, Marco, you were the guest on this week's episode of Shift Beers.
I was.
You were, and tell me how fun it was to be a part of that gang for the evening.
Oh, it was a blast. It was an absolute blast, and the show does take you through how when Josh and I were communicating about potential topics for the show, my first toss as a topic was terrible wine, whether it be box form, bottle form, just terrible. And they kind of were cool with that idea. Okay, so I had that was what we were thinking about, and then several weeks went by because we didn't really pick a date, and then once we got closer to say, hey, this is the day we want to do it. Do you still want to do this? And I said, you know what? What about something weird, like alternatives to the way you consume alcohol? And he said, actually, we had that on the list. We just didn't know when we wanted to do it. And I said, well, let's do it then.
So for our listeners who that might sound a little confusing to, can you go into a little more detail about alternative beer delivery methods or alternative?
Yeah, it was alternative as far as unconventional. So alternative alcohol delivery methods, whether it be the way that you consume the alcohol or strange packaging as well.
Okay.
And so they go, we go into it. I can say we this time because I was on the show.
Yes.
So we go into that. And I took things, Chris showed up with, as an example, the giant oil can from Foster's, because who else does that? Nobody.
Nobody does that.
Nobody does that. I'm not going to say whether people should or shouldn't. I'm just going to say they do, and so that makes it an odd package, right? And then we cover the shows, right? So this is what we're going to do. I took vodka Jello cups.
Like prepackaged Jello shots.
Prepackaged Jello shots. And we go into the different flavors and the way that they taste. And
you also went into, in very, very extreme detail, an ASMR segment of the show where each of you in turn slurped, for lack of a better word,
yes,
these Jello shots, even though everyone had spoons that you were gracious enough to bring along.
I did.
Who brings spoons to a beer podcast? Who thinks of that?
I had Jello shots, so they were cups. To be fair, these were bigger than,
it's like Solo cups.
Than, let's say, your cool aunt that makes the Jello shots for somebody's high school graduation party that are supposed to be for the adults. You know how they come in these little teeny plastic souffle cups with the lids and all that? No, these were like almost like 3/4 of a size of like a snack pack pudding cup.
Gotcha.
So and we go into the package that I purchased them in. And
which looked like it was marketed towards kids.
It absolutely looked like
Tide Pods.
Disclaimer. Do we need to pause and go to disclaimer?
Yeah, we do not eat Tide Pods.
So those were two of the things that were brought for the actual topic. And Josh had something and Beth had something, and we go into those things on the show. And then came time for bonus beers. And they said, okay, time for bonus beers. And we all looked around, and I had a bag. I had a bag of stuff.
You had a magic bag.
I had a magic bag. I had a magic bag of stuff. And they all looked around like, we don't have any bonus beers. I'm like, I have some. And then Beth says, well, I have one or two. I'm like, okay, all right. So now we can move on to the bonus beer segment. And
your bonus beer was brilliant. Brilliant.
Okay. I am not going to give away what it is. You should listen.
Yes, you absolutely need to listen to the episode.
I cellared something.
It was the perfect drink to cellar. 100%. So did you cellar? without giving it away, what you brought as your bonus was kind of a 2-part beverage.
Yes.
Did you cellar both aspects of that beverage? Or was one fresh and one was cellared?
No. So I took 2 of the same thing, and they were both cellared the same way.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
So I also took something, shout out to BC's Montgomery, our host here, BC's Montgomery, where you can get blocks. So for those of you who don't know what blocks are, they are frozen ice bricks of flavored alcohol. And the intention is to make this flavored alcohol ice brick essentially a cold infusion into your particular beverage.
So kind of like taking, and I'm just making this up off the top of my head, kind of like freezing Kahlua and then dropping those frozen Kahlua blocks into coffee to make...
Basically, yes.
Basically that only it's liquor into other liquor, beer, what have you.
Right, exactly.
Okay.
Flavors. Absolutely. That's what it is.
Okay.
Yeah. So
nice.
I have that, and then we discuss, actually, Truth Beer Pod.
Yes, that was actually a pretty major part of the episode, which, I mean, shout out to the Shift Beer guys for basically letting, I would say us, but it was just you who were there, but letting our podcast take up a majority of the time. They let you shout us out from the rooftops. Follow us at Truth Beer Pod on the Twitters if you aren't already, to know when our episodes are out and about, and for fun stuff that we may or may not be actually doing or drinking.
It was a blast. It was an absolute blast. I hope everybody goes and listens to Shift Beers. I know that our show covers the shows. Mm-hmm. I was there, so I could cover
the show.
The show.
Yeah.
But
firsthand.
I think some of the cool things and cool aspects about the show should be saved for the show.
Absolutely. Now, I do want to talk briefly about like the major bombshell that
I know where you're going.
That was exposed during this episode.
It's
of Shift
very early
Beers.
in the episode.
It was very early in the episode. So, as we know, Chris has early onset Alzheimer's.
Right.
But what he was not aware of, Josh and Beth let it slip that they are the ones who run, and I'm using air quotes for those of you who aren't on the platinum Patreon level tier live stream. They run Brian's social media accounts. That they manage those accounts: Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, that type of thing. So I think it was Beth who let it slip that they did that, and Chris I guess he couldn't wrap his head around it. He's like, well, but Brian likes some of my wife's posts, and I'll tell you, his mind was blown. Much like I think all of ours were when we realized that Brian really doesn't exist. I mean, was
not a real
was
person.
he there
He's
when
fictitious.
you were there?
No, he wasn't.
So,
there.
Case in point.
No, and he still didn't bring any bonus beers
or alternative beer delivery methods.
No.
Yeah.
Unless his alternative is not, which isn't the
butt
point. Butt losing, yeah.
Yeah. But no, it was a really interesting. I mean, it was definitely interesting to see Chris's, I guess see is the wrong term. I was listening to that realization.
I saw it in front of me.
You saw it, yeah.
I saw it in front of me.
Yeah,
It was movie-esque.
So, Chris, I'm sorry that you had to find out the way that you did, but I'm glad that you found out while you were amongst such good friends and good people.
Yeah, he recovered quickly. He bounced back.
Oh, he did. Got some liquor
back
into him, and that took care of all of it.
Yeah, and before we wrap up Shift Beers and move on to what I think is going to be the final show that we're going to talk about for this week, I just want to cover the burp count. So you do a couple of drinking games with Shift Beers. A lot of the other shows, you gotta really be pressing to figure out what kind of drinking game you're going to do with those shows. But with Shift Beers, there's a couple of different ways you can come about a drinking game. We covered it in episode 1. If you haven't listened to episode 1, you're catching us in episode 2, so you could have a drink every time there's a SpongeBob rejoin. That's how they rejoin from their transitions or their pauses. That's going to be, sort of entry level. Also, entry level is going to be every time Chris realizes or they catch Chris in an early onset dementia sort of situation. Mm-hmm. It's a little more morbid, but you could do it. But you could also have a drink every time what they call is push a button, and what that is where they have audible phrases, and they interject them for a purpose. And that purpose may be levity, or that purpose may be absolutely purposeful to what it's actually pertaining to. Those are absolutely fun, which you can do when you have and you put in the kind of money to that equipment that they have here on Truth Beer Pod. We are not to that level.
We do not have a spaceship sitting in front of us right now.
No. And they go into that as well in the show about the spaceship and about Jeff. And I'm going to let you listen to the show and find out what his last name is according to Josh's dad.
Papa Angle.
Papa Angle. So
back to the burp count, the burp count game.
56 burps.
Now, is that counting yours as well, or did you exclude yourself from the count because you were a guest and you knew that we were going to be recapping on the show?
Good question. So there are no audible burps coming from me.
Okay. So this is purely just the official Shift Beers cast.
And I did that to keep it official.
Okay, that works.
Even though
Excellent.
I was on the show and mine would count, I kept it to just the Shift Beers podcast crew.
Because some guests may be gassier than other guests, and that would skew the results.
Correct. And so if you didn't listen to episode 1, when you're finished with episode 2, go back listen to episode 1. But I'll go ahead and explain. For a sip of beer, a regular average sip of beer is about 2 ounces. So 56, that's 112. 112 ounces divided by 16, that's going to give you
math.
7. That's going to give you 7 pints of beer. So if you're going to do this...
In the amount of time that you're listening to Shift Beers.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. 7 pints of beer in the time you listen to Shift Beers. So
7 pints of beer in your gut. 7 pints of beer.
What you got to do is you got to prep, right? You got to be ready for this. If this is what you're gonna do, this is how you're like, all right, it's a game, I'm gonna do it. Then you got to prep. You got to have your drinks in front of you.
You got to be in a safe space.
Got to be in a safe space. That's right. Pull over.
Do not drink and drive. Do not play this game.
Do this while you're pulled over or while you're in a safe space or somebody else is driving.
Or if you're sipping water if you're driving, if you're doing this game while you're, because a lot of people listen to podcasts in the car. If you're drinking water or tea or, coffee, something like that, okay. But please be safe, be responsible.
And be near a restroom. Okay. So I would say they brought it. I mean, from a show perspective, from a burp count perspective, they brought it. It was a lot of fun. I want you to go and listen to the episode. Julia, I know you listened to it. And
it was a lot of fun. I listened to it while I was at work, and there were times that the show always makes me laugh. The show is just 100% a good time. Every single episode is, you feel like you are there drinking with friends. It's what it's all about. Yep. There were times, because I was listening at work, that I had to kind of muffle my snorting, laughing ways because I didn't want someone to say what's so funny and have to try to explain what was happening.
Yeah, get into that.
But
try
no,
that one day.
It phenomenal show as always. The amount of shout outs for Truth Beer and Podsequences was wonderful. Thank you, Chris, Beth, and Josh for allowing Marco to kind of take over a little bit with that.
Yeah, it was fun. Thank you, Shift Beers crew. I truly appreciate it. And so now the circle is complete. Both members of Truth Beer and Podsequences have been on Shift Beers.
Yes.
So that means the next time...
It's almost a rite of passage, I feel like.
Well, that means the next time both of us have to be on.
Hell yeah. So,
right.
so Josh, get 2 mics ready for the next time you have guests on the show. We're showing up in tandem.
That's right. Julia.
Marco.
Why don't we pause?
Okay.
And...
Because it looks like you need a refill of your beer.
Yeah, because once we finish this next show, we're going to have to toast or cheers, and I cannot, do that without anything in my glass.
Or you'll have to fight Chase.
Tell you what.
Although you're short enough, you might be able to just run back and forth between his legs, and he'll never catch you.
I was going to say he'd have to catch me first. Okay? So, but I'm also going to say hi to my son. I'm going to, check in on him, which I can see. He's right there. I just need to, say hi.
But sometimes, having a little closer of a presence is appreciated.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, we're going to take a quick break, going to refill our glasses, and when we come back, we are going to go over Cincy Brewcast, where the gnome sat down with the amazing folks at Cartridge Brewing.
Yeah.
We'll see you in a few.
All right. And then she said, "Is that all you got?"
And I said, "Yeah, that is all I got. What's your point? What's it to you?"
That's all I got.
Hey, we are
back.
Thank you guys for hanging on while we went and refilled our glasses and said hi to Vincent and made sure that he was doing well with his craft sodas. And
yeah, he's doing well. He's got his graveyard going on over there.
Nice
craft
monster
soda,
truck.
The
craft
soda
okay.
Graveyard over there.
Gotcha. You said graveyard, and I was thinking of the monster.
Grave digger.
That's Grave Digger.
Yeah, it's
so
Grave Digger.
I tried to act like I knew what I was talking about, and
that's why we don't get invited to the cool places.
Yeah.
It's
on
both of us.
One day. Maybe.
Well, that's all we can hope for.
That's all we can hope.
It is. That's all we can hope for.
All right. So,
what are you drinking, Julia?
The refill that I got in my glass is Mad Tree's Churro Coffee Table. So they're coffee blonde ale, but with some churro added in for some extra deliciousness.
Do you think they got their churros from Costco?
Probably.
Have you had the churros from Costco?
I've had the hot dogs from Costco. I'm assuming the churros are kind of the same thing.
Yeah, kind of the same thing.
Okay.
Yeah.
How about you? I see that you have a very tall glass next to you.
That's right. I got a Crispy Boy glass over here. Shout out to BC's Montgomery, our host, where you can get nice, tall, just sexy-looking Crispy Boy glasses.
The
when
glass
you order
even
Crispy
says
Boy.
Crispy Boys, Boiz.
That's right.
That is phenomenal. BC's knows what they're doing. They absolutely do.
They know how to do it. So I've got Paulaner Oktoberfest beer, the original from Munich Oktoberfest. It's Germany's #1 Oktoberfest beer. That's 6% ABV, 1 pint, 9 full ounces. So there we go. It's really good.
Excellent. And since we shouted out BC's Bottle Lodge Montgomery as our host, our very gracious host, I did want to remind everyone that we are not sponsored by Sonder Brewing. Sonder Brewing. Hey, remember I said earlier that we have a podcast too? We have a podcast too. Please subscribe.
Yeah, do that. Subscribe.
Absolutely.
And when you come here, because I know that the
to
Sonder
BC's,
Crew
not
comes
Sonder.
here to BC's. The Sonder Crew comes to BC's. If you like what we're doing, just throw some bucks on a gift card. We'll be around next week. So, yeah, do that. Or not, and drop some beer off for us.
Yes. Either way, we will drink it on the show.
We will
talk you up on the show.
Yeah.
And maybe we'll give you guys a break for only drinking Sonder beers.
Or only listening to country music, unless you have the gnome on, and then you have 311.
Hell yeah! So Marco, what is the last podcast that? Do you still want to throw a dart? Because I mean, I gotta admit that's kind of fun. Do you want to throw a dart even though we don't need to?
Why don't? Yeah, okay. I'm gonna play you in darts right now.
Oh shit! It
is
on. Let's do it.
All right.
3, 2, 1. That was like the worst dart noise. Noise? The worst dart noise. No.
Are you all right?
No.
You okay?
I think
Are you
I'm
having
stroking
a
out
stroke?
here.
Please be okay. Julia.
Yeah. It's fine.
Don't do it here.
So
Kenny's the only one working, so.
So if I go down, we have a problem. No, both of the darts hit their mark, even though I can't say the word noise anymore, apparently. So neither of them hit the podcast that we're going to to end the show with.
No, but we could talk about the box that they hit or the one that the bottle that it ricocheted off of. And thank God it didn't break it because it was one of those meads, and damn, those meads are expensive.
Those are pricey. Yeah.
I see what Kenny was doing by having us put the dartboard there. He's like,
he wants us to buy them. They're not selling.
They're going to break something, and then they're going to have to buy it.
Yeah. Props to you, Kenny. We're on to you, though.
Way to go, producer Kenny.
Yeah. Anyway, so
Cincy Brewcast, Cartridge Brewing, and the beer experience. Julia, do you want to cover the show notes, or do you want me to cover the show notes?
I'll do the show notes.
All right.
I thought Gnome wrote up a really nice set of show notes for this one. Craft beer isn't just about what's in your glass. He has spent a lot of time trying to get that point across, and it's the sort of focus that this week's episode of Cincy Brewcast covers. He says, sort of, because it was a last-minute show edition after a very justified cancellation from Braxton this week, which we definitely want to shout out Evan from Braxton Brewing and his new fathership. He is now the proud dad to a new little baby, so shout out to Evan and the Braxton family, because everyone's part of that.
Congratulations.
The folks going back to the show notes, the folks at Cartridge were kind enough to drop what they were doing and invite me over to the brewery for an episode of the Brewcast. They even treated me to dinner and sent my wife some beer as well. They know how to keep peace in my house just as much as they know how to create a beautiful brewery experience. The guests on this episode were Kyle and Lindsay Hackbarth and Adam Mills. And they drank an entire flight of Cartridge beers, which included Airborne, Drop Zone, Escape, Passion Fruit Fuse, and Prost.
It was the last-minute edition. That's great. Thank you to Cartridge. I'm going to say thank you, and I know the Gnome just said thank you, but if you're listening to this show, it's because either you're a family member of ours or because you care about the Cincinnati craft beer industry and the shows that promote the Cincinnati craft beer industry. So if you're not following the Gnome on social media, go ahead and do that. Or go to his website, get some merch, that kind of thing. Support all of the podcasts that we're talking about in not just by listening, but if they have a give back initiative or if they have a tap room, go there. But certainly thank you to Cartridge for stepping up.
Sometimes cancellations with guests that any of these podcasts that we cover, sometimes things happen in people's lives to where they have to cancel last minute. And if it wasn't for Cartridge this week, there would not have been a Cincy Brewcast, or it would have been more of an episode of Prost where Gnome is just recording by himself in his basement, drinking the salty tears that are falling into his glass of whatever current Oktoberfest he is drinking.
Correct. And he's starting to compile his Oktoberfest. He's gaining, he's acquiring his Oktoberfest. And
why exactly is he doing that, Marco, for those people that might be new to Cincy Brewcast? Why is he acquiring as many of the locally brewed and distributed or packaged Oktoberfest beers as he can?
Because he's hiding his problem, and his problem is that he loves Oktoberfest beer.
I was talking more about the yearly countdown, or not really countdown, but the battle for the best.
Oh yeah,
of the Oktoberfest.
Oh, okay. The battle for the best, or the Oktoberfest challenge. So the Gnarly Gnome collects Oktoberfest, and then he has this tournament. Mm-hmm. It's the Tournament of Oktoberfest Champions, and he gets to anoint at the end of this his number one Oktoberfest. And
number one Cincinnati Oktoberfest. These are all local
and
Oktoberfest.
And as a little bit of a curveball last year, I know this because I was part of the actual final show.
You were the curveball?
No, but...
Was that your nickname in high school?
You knew I was going to do it. Okay. Yes. No. So, the last year, what we did for the final show is we had, I forget, it was 4 beers, 6 beers, whatever it is, and we anointed and proclaimed the best Cincinnati Oktoberfest. But the curveball was that our side beers were Oktoberfest from Germany.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now, I don't know what he's planning for this year. I do know that if you follow him on social media, he's planning on having every single local craft Oktoberfest. Every single one. And our show, Truth, Beer, and Podsequences, is happy to help. We offered our help on social media, and we're here for you, buddy. You know
We're
how to
just
get in
waiting for
touch
a
with
reply.
us. You know how to get in touch with us. Let us know what we need to do to help support this, to help support you, to help support the cause. It's a great cause. For this show, again, thank you to Cartridge for stepping up. The Cincinnati craft beer scene, if you know about it, care about it, it, like you said, the show could have taken on a little bit of a different spin if he didn't get a brewery guest or something like that. I even reached out to him about having him join us, but the day he needed to record was not the day that we were recording. It was actually the day after. So, we'll be here for you in the future. But the show was interesting because the show talked about a wide spectrum of things. Yes, of course, they drank beer. It's a beer podcast, so they had beer.
They had to do From the Beer Fridge, which is the Gnome segment of, what are they drinking. But the From the Beer Fridge for this episode spanned really the entire episode. They never really focused on very long on one specific beer that they were drinking from their flight. It was, what are we drinking now? Oh, hey, why don't you go ahead and drink this one?
Yep.
And then they moved on to what was happening in Cartridge's life cycle in their world. And then it was, okay, what should we drink next? So From the Beer Fridge spanned, the entire episode and not just one focused segment.
They also, they went into many things. They went into the way that they come about curating the beer, the way that they, approach the restaurant aspect of things, the way that they approach the branding and marketing, what they're really looking to do with the space, with the brand itself. They talked about the fact that they were present for the lager episode, the lager panel that the Gnarly Gnome did over at Fretboard, and some of the conversations that came out of that, and some of the interactions that Kyle had with Braxton, as an example.
Yeah.
As one of the examples that come up in the show, they actually talk about an interaction there.
Right, and for those of you who may not know, Braxton has multiple locations throughout the Northern Kentucky area, and they have one location here in Cincinnati. So they presented to Cartridge, when are you guys going to open up your next location?
Right.
Don't want to expose anything on our show.
Well,
That's something that I feel like the Gnome, should definitely own.
Well, we can talk about what they did talk about.
Okay.
And what they did talk about is them really loving that giant C for Cartridge. And
Who
so
doesn't?
there is a cardboard factory. And so they thought, well, maybe if it fits into our sort of theme, they could open up in this cardboard factory.
Right.
So they're going to go take a look, and they may be able to create another space. Instead of Cartridge, it would be cardboard.
Right, because they did go into fairly decent detail that if they do open up another space, they already have, the Peter Cartridge factory as their main flagship location. And if they open up another location, they don't want to try to recreate that same environment in another environment that's not a cartridge factory. That's not that same presence.
It's not to themselves. It's not true to themselves, right? So it would need to be very, very much true to themselves. Very, very, very much a reflection of the brand. And so if they found another factory that they could go into, and then the fact that it was cartridge, cardboard, it just worked.
And that could expose, or not expose, but that could allow them to represent another side of the cartridge personality. They already have, again, the cartridge factory, the cardboard factory. Could showcase, maybe more of their seltzers, of their lighter, more hipster, more eco-friendly,
right? Eco-friendly absolutely.
Side of what the brewery is trying to do.
Yeah,
I think it's a fantastic idea. They're not pursuing it per se, just yet because, they're still fairly new.
Well, that's
and
that's what you say when you're doing it, but you don't want anybody to get their hopes up.
This is true. I mean, look at Braxton. No, we're not opening up another location, called the Barrel House, or Fretboard. No, we're not going to open up a location up in Hamilton, and then all of a sudden it's but our name somehow fell onto the side of this building.
Right.
So be on the lookout.
We fell into this. So yeah, be on the lookout on that. You had an
factory.
interesting insight. And Julie and I, as we talked about in episode 1, Julie and I, we don't get together and when we're not doing this podcast and go to places and hang out, and we try to keep the content on Truth Beer and Podsequences very fresh.
Yes, very very almost segmented to where I don't know what you're thinking, you don't know what I'm thinking,
right?
Until we're here recording.
Yeah, but we were together yesterday at Fretboard for a thing,
yes.
And
we will be talking about next week.
We will talk about that next week. But you had an interesting insight when we talked yesterday into the cartridge show in the episode where you're like, hold on a second, I tend to notice something about what's going on. Wait, go ahead and let this is inside, like just picking up on the finest detail here on Truth Beer Podsequences. And that's what we do, is we try to make sure that we're giving you this inside detail, these things that we pick up from the shows that we love. Julie, go ahead and give your version of what you heard.
So something that I picked up on that maybe no one else would ever pick up on is when the first couple of times that Cartridge was on Cincy Brewcast, that you were hearing about Cartridge and their beer names were very, very like gun and ammunition heavy, Sabbat, Cartridge, etc. Well, now they're starting to release names like Prost, Airstrike, things that aren't as tied into that brand. They're still somewhat military, somewhat, ammunition based.
So are they petering out on
They're Peter cartridging out, I fear. I'm worried that given another dozen or so brews, we're just going to be seeing
Nickelodeon character names.
SpongeBob IPA.
Yeah.
It's coming.
Patrick Pilsner.
The Patrick Pilsner. I mean, again, I'm sure the beers are still going to be absolutely fantastic, but I have noticed that the significance of their naming scheme.
Mermaid Man, Munich Hells.
If the type of branding that they were trying to do with all of their beer names.
Wonder Boy
has
Watermelon Sour.
Man, Marco, you need to get a third or fourth or fifth job purely doing beer names for Cartridge or for any brewery. I mean, I think that you are hitting the nail on the head with some. Just don't name a beer after yourself or let anyone else name a beer after you. Because that would...
Too late.
A little bit of narcissism hitting up there.
I didn't come up with the name.
But you let it happen.
That may or may not have come up on Shift Beers.
Listen to the episode if you're curious about it.
Yes, that I was with the Shift Beers team. Mm-hmm. Julie, what else we got on Cincy Brewcast?
Just that everyone was excited to talk about the different experiences that they were doing with food pairings and their beers, so they wanted to have a full experience. I'm trying to do maybe some, I don't want to say off the books, but experiences where days that they aren't normally open or times that they aren't normally open. They wanted to do beer and food pairings, wine and food pairings, and really try to bring out those experiences that you might not get.
They're getting really creative. I mean,
Absolutely.
They did talk about rabbit being on, a beer pairing. They talked about
Hassenpfeffer.
Quail. And there's rabbit. There's quail. There's
ostrich.
Chipmunk. Giant ostrich eggs, where they were creating, an experience, a drinkable experience with giant ostrich eggs.
Because ostrich eggs are thick enough; they're kind of like coconut shells.
Yeah.
If you're able to crack them open, they would like to try to make, first like a giant omelet that kind of serves the whole table.
Yep.
But then the drinks that they serve you are poured into those hollowed out ostrich eggs, and if they can pull it off, that sounds amazing.
It sounds out there, but it also sounds amazing.
It really does.
Yeah, I mean, if they can do it,
And if they can pair it with a parachute pilsner, for example,
Yeah,
they've got a hit.
sounds great. That, I think, wraps up Cincy Brewcast. The other thing I wanted to touch on, which is under the Gnarly Gnomes sort of network of things that he does, is he brewed over at Municipal. He brewed Big Sis, the beer. And the beer itself, what is it, a English style pale ale, or I may be incorrect on that, but Cincy Brewcast started with a man named Mike Cisneros and the Gnarly Gnome, and Mike Cisneros' daughter at the beginning of the iteration of the show. And Mike has several years ago, Mike passed, and Mike and the gnome and his daughter were really wanting to do a show that talked about Cincinnati craft beer. And the Gnarly Gnome continued that on, and a few years ago started what is Big Sis Day. And Big Sis Day, a couple years in a row, was over at Braxton. And last year and this year it's going to be at Municipal. And I think,
Kind of what it is, all the brewers that knew Mike, that know the gnome, they get together to brew a beer in his honor. Different styles every year. There was a tropical stout.
Yeah, last year was a tropical stout, and before that, I think it was a hoppy pilsner, hoppy by accident, and then the year before that, it was just a straight up pilsner. But the point is that the point that I wanted to make was that to the people in the Cincinnati craft brewing industry, to the people that follow what the gnome does, this goes back to a person who's at the origin of inspiring the Gnarly Gnome to do what he's doing now, and to do things like he's doing now, not just with brewing Big Sis in memory of Mike, and so that's coming up. And if in any way you have any sort of interest in that, follow the gnome, go to his website, and maybe we'll see you at Big Sis Day. I unfortunately was not able to be part of the brew day, but I got to hang out with the gnome, and so did you, which we'll talk about next week, because he had a full day of beer.
He did.
And that
he
was
did.
The day of the week was Monday, and we had a full day of beer. We caught up with him towards the early afternoon, middle evening part, and we will pick back up on that story next week. But for us now, I've got about a quarter glass. Julia?
I have almost a full glass still, because doing more talking than drinking. I know, shame on me.
No.
But yeah, so thank you guys so much, as always, for coming on this journey with us. We've been having a fantastic time, recapping all of the Cincinnati beer podcasts with our version of the truth, with our version of what we're hearing. And so far, the podcasts that we are recapping have responded positively. We'll see if we can change that.
Right. Well, we'll keep working on it, and thank you, and thank you for listening. Thank you for sticking with us. Julia, thank you.
Marco, thank you.
You're very, very welcome. Julia, what are you doing next week?
Probably sitting here talking to you about Cincinnati beer podcasts and having a beer. How about you?
You know what? Let's do that.
Let's do it.
I think we're going to do that. Eventually, one of these days, we're actually going to put out the day, the time, and everybody knows the place. It's BC's Bottle Lodge, Montgomery. BC's Bottle Lodge, Montgomery, where they just put in, what is this called? This with the table and the sand.
Table?
They put in a shuffleboard table over here. I don't see anybody at it. I don't see anybody using it yet, but it's here. It's a new addition. New addition. That's a music group, isn't it?
Could be.
Oh, wow.
Why don't you sing us a bar or two of one of their songs?
All right, hold on a second. And not only, okay, so I sang that.
Which was
And-
your voice, your singing voice is honey.
Well,
I
thank you.
never would have expected that after hearing, your speaking voice.
Right.
Brilliant. I mean, absolutely brilliant.
Full of surprises over here, Julia. Speaking of New Edition, wasn't Bobby Brown in New Edition?
Sure. The way that I remember it, absolutely. Yeah. Well, Marco,
My prerogative.
I think before our glasses are empty, we should wrap things up. Again, thank you guys for being here. Please follow us on Twitter at TruthBeerPod. Marco, it was a blast.
It was a blast, Julia.
Let's
hey,
do this again.
Cheers. Let's do this next
Cheers.
week. Hey, everybody. Thank you. Get on the Soch. Tweet us. And bye.
Bye.